Hi, everyone. Hi, and welcome to our session. Thanks so much for joining us. We're really excited to speak to you this morning. And I know there's so many other booths, so many other things going on at this event. I've been online, on and off at the Rate My Placement Top Employers event for yesterday and this morning. And it's been great to see the kind of wide range of different employers here, all the different opportunities that are available. A booth with puppies in it for some reason that is quite fun as well, and loads of other stuff going on. So I've really enjoyed it so far, and I'm really happy to be able to be on the main stage and chatting to you all for the next 20-30 minutes or so. So yeah, thanks so much for giving up a bit of your time to come and join us when there is so much other stuff going on as well. So yeah, really do appreciate that, and I'll start by saying yeah, just a big thank you. So I'm going to take you through a few different bits today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about GSK. So I work for GSK. I'll explain a little bit more about what we do as an organization a little bit later. I'm going to talk about our roles, but I'm also going to tell you a little bit more about what our process is going to look like, what our assessment's going to look like, some top tips for you. How can you succeed in what is looking like for most companies to be quite a different recruitment process this year, a slightly more online process, a slightly more digital process, and maybe an online assessment center as well. So I'm going to go through all the top tips that we can share that hopefully will be really useful for you if you are applying for placements this year, you are applying for graduate roles in the future, and you are going through an online process, including an assessment center. How can you really maximize your chances? Some of that will be useful for GSK. Some of that will be useful for the myriad other companies that are here as well. So hopefully you do find it useful. So to introduce myself, my name's Josh. I work in the early talent recruitment team at GSK. So that means I'm responsible for running our recruitment processes and recruiting and doing events like this, I suppose, all around our early talent roles and our programs. So that's our Future Leaders program, which is our best known graduate scheme, our industrial placement program, which I'm going to be focusing a little bit more on that today, our summer placements, our apprenticeships, anything for people right at the very beginning of their career. If you are interested in hearing a bit more about GSK as well, we do have a booth here. We've got loads of different materials about the company, some videos to give you an overview of the organization, and a bunch of our current placement students answering questions as they have been throughout yesterday as well. But that's a little bit about me, my role. I typically work, you may be able to tell that not there right now, but I typically work in our head office, which is GSK House, located in West London. That's our global HQ. So GSK as an organization is a UK based company. I'm going to go through a few different bits and bobs today. So I'm going to start by giving you an overview of our organization, our company, GSK. What is the company about? What would we actually do? What is the purpose of the organization? And importantly, and I think something we maybe don't talk quite enough about, the actual culture of GSK as well. I think that's so great and something I'm really looking forward to sharing with you. And I know many of you are looking and applying and interested in knowing about different opportunities available. So I'm going to talk through the placement opportunities we have open right now. What can you apply to right now? What can you apply to in the near future as well? So I'm going to go through all the different options, different roles that we've got, and then the main crux of this presentation and this session, the real kind of bulk of it is going to be those tips on our application process. How can you succeed in a virtual assessment center? How can you maximize your chances in an online process? And a few top tips. So a lot of companies like ourselves kind of switched to online assessment centers for this year with the current situation with COVID and not being able to bring in loads of students into our offices. We were able to kind of trial this kind of last spring for a number of our roles. So I do have a little idea and a few top tips from that time that hopefully will be relevant for you applying for placements and roles this autumn. So I'll go through all the top tips that we can share as well. But to start with, I know some of you, if you're joining this session, you might know a little bit about GSK already. You might not know anything about the company, and that's absolutely fine as well. But to start, to set the scene, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we do as an organization, because I'm sure that's important. Again, if you are interested in learning a little bit more about us as a company, we've got a load of different resources at our booth that I would definitely encourage you to go check out after this session, of course, and chat to a few of my colleagues over at that booth too. So to set the scene, to give you a bit more info about GSK, we are a science-led and global healthcare company. But the reason that I really like to work for GSK, the reason that I'm proud to work for the company, the reason I actually applied to work for GSK at the start, a couple of years ago, was really around that mission the organization has, that culture that purpose, that mission, the reason why the company exists, and that's to help people to do more, to feel better, and to live longer. So everything that we do as an organization, everything that I do, even directly, indirectly, everything that anyone within the company is doing is really aiming and looking at that purpose, that mission, which I personally find really, really exciting. You'll speak to people at GSK, and it's a mission that really does resonate with everyone in the organization. If that's something that really jumps out of you as being a sort of company and a sort of purpose that you're really interested in, and it really does resonate with your own values, then this could be a great organization for yourselves. To achieve this purpose and to really strive and get achieve that mission, we've got three global businesses that all make up GSK. So we're often known as a pharmaceutical company. That's not the only thing we do, but we do have a huge pharmaceutical business. There's the part of our company that discovers, develops, and manufactures those life-saving medicines. Those medicines in areas like oncology, in areas like HIV, like in respiratory, and loads of other different areas. We discover, develop, and manufacture so many life-saving products and medicines. We're also huge and one of the leaders and one of the biggest companies within vaccines as well, as I'm sure you can probably imagine, and you may have seen over the last few months, there's been a lot about GSK in the media, particularly about our vaccines part of the business. We've got a number of new partnerships in our vaccines company with other huge healthcare companies like Sanofi and various other ones, all working together on that COVID vaccine. So it's been a very, very busy time for that part of our business. But that's not the only thing we do. We're also really, really huge within consumer healthcare. Those products that you've probably seen yourself, you've probably used yourself, things like Sensodyne, things like Aquafresh, Panadol, loads of kind of household names, products you've probably seen in Boots, and things that you can buy over the counter for consumers. So we're currently in the middle of a joint venture with our consumer healthcare part of our business with Pfizer, one of the other kind of huge healthcare companies, to form the world's largest consumer healthcare business in the next year or two. So it's a very exciting time for all our different businesses that make up GSK. That's a kind of quick overview. I say quick, it was an overview of the company as a whole, what we do and what kind of makes up GSK. Now, I was going to go through and talk a little bit more about how many employees, all the different sites we have, but loads of that stuff you can just find out yourselves. I think what you can't find out, and what is difficult to find out simply through looking online, checking out websites, is the actual what it's like to work at an organization, what the culture's like, what the people are like, which is why it's great that you've all come along and joined sessions like this. You can chat to people from the organizations. You can hear presentations when they're talking about it and bring it to life a little bit more. I think that's really, really important. I think the culture at GSK is great, and it is certainly the thing that jumped out at me as something that I found really surprisingly amazing when I first kind of joined the organization. You end up spending a lot of your time at work. If you're applying to placements, you're going to spend potentially a year of your life working in an organization. You really do want to make sure it's somewhere where you feel supported, somewhere where you feel happy, where you're not dreading Monday morning, you're not dreading going into work. You actually are at a place where you can kind of be yourself. You are supported, and you actually like working. And I think the GSK culture is really, really great in all of these different areas. I remember arriving for my interview at GSK, and I turned up at the head office. It's like in Brentford in West London, and it's a huge kind of glass corporate, kind of intimidating, terrifying, massive building. And I remember being quite nervous and thinking, oh, I don't know if this company is going to be for me. It's going to be really, really corporate. And you go in and it is like the complete opposite of that. It's very, very different to what I was expecting. It's very, very friendly. It's very, very open. Everyone is genuinely wanting to help, which I found great. It's the culture here is kind of underpinned by these three main pillars that kind of sum up life at GSK, I suppose. So that's be you, feel good, and keep growing. So be you, the idea that we all bring something different, we all bring something unique. That's really genuinely a really, really good thing. There isn't kind of a mold you have to pretend to be to come and join the company and be yourself, bring your best self to work. Then feel good. There's a huge emphasis on that work-life balance here, which again is something that I wasn't necessarily expecting coming into a huge global, huge corporate company. It doesn't always, that kind of industry doesn't always have the best reputation for work-life balance, but here at GSK, it has got a fantastic work-life balance, focus on well-being, flexibility. people were working from home quite a lot even before the last 6 months or so, and there's a huge emphasis on well-being and the fact you can do stuff outside of work and bring your full self to work, but certainly have a life outside of the office too. And then finally, keep growing. There's a huge amount of development opportunities. When you're growing as a person, when you're growing within your role, the company's going to benefit. You'll chat to people at GSK who've been here for like 30 years, had like 20 different roles in that time, and always developed, always grown, always learned new things, and had a really cool and varied and fun career without having to actually leave the organization. So that's really an exciting part of working here as well. So these things all underpin the culture, what it's like working on a day-to-day basis. They're also underpinned by our employee resource groups. So we've got 13 different employee resource groups, each of which is focused on a slightly different area, and they're basically a network or societies even of current employees within the organization across the world who work together, who run different development events, social events, networking events, and help influence the strategy of the company, the direction of the company, the culture of the company. So these groups include Spectrum, which is our LGBTQ plus group, the Women's Leadership Initiative, the Disability Confidence Network, Embrace, which is our Black and minority ethnic employee network as well. So there's a huge number of different employee resource groups, networks and societies. Everyone is encouraged to get involved with GSK, and that also really feeds in and helps improve and develop the culture within the company. So as I say, wherever you end up, wherever you do your placement or graduate role or whatever you're interested in, make sure it is somewhere where you genuinely can see yourself working and genuinely would want to come into work every day. I'm going to talk a little bit now about the placement roles that we have. That was a bit of an overview of GSK. Again, you can find out more at a booth. But I'm going to talk about the different roles that we have open right now, the different areas that you can join us, and a bit about the process and a few kind of top tips for yourselves. We are going to have a time for questions at the end of the session as well. So if you do have any questions throughout the session, do pop them in the chat box and we'll try and answer any and all that we can towards the end of the session. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our placement roles. So I imagine that's why many of you have actually joined this event, joined this session today to learn a little bit more about placements and to kind of learn about how you can do better in the process as well, maximize your chances. So to give a quick overview of our placement program, we've got about 320 odd placement students joining us each year across pretty much all our business areas as well. So many different areas and roles that you can come into GSK at and join us. So no matter what you're studying, no matter what you're interested in, no matter what grades you've got, there will be roles that are open to you. There'll certainly be things that you can apply for and hopefully will be really interesting for you. So these are across the UK as well. So again, very, very geographically spread in terms of the locations and roles that we offer at GSK. So you do not need any specific experience. We're not asking you to have loads and loads of previous internships or experience. This is supposed to be your experience. This is a year in industry. It's many people's kind of first step into like the professional working world. We're not expecting you to do previous internships because this is a year-long internship. So we understand you're all students. You don't have to have loads of previous experience. We're more interested in your strengths, your own potential, the things that you're good at, the things you like doing, your motivations, and we want people that are really inspired by GSK's mission, inspired by our values, and those are the things that we're really looking for rather than you having done lots of work experience before. So you do get a huge amount of responsibility kind of fairly swiftly. You get tangible things to put on your CV. It gives you a real good taste of what working at a big company is actually like, and you get some tangible stuff to put on your CV as well. So it's a really, really valuable opportunity to work and get that kind of experience of working with a huge global, really, really well-known company. So I'd thoroughly recommend it. If you're a bit on the fence between doing a placement or not, I would thoroughly recommend checking out the different options that we have. We've got roles across our business. No matter what you're studying, there will be something open for you across our manufacturing and supply chain businesses within research and development. We've got about 100, 150 odd roles within R&D that are all open now. Many of them are closing literally tomorrow, so it's quite good timing for this talk. So our R&D roles, if you're interested in those, I would recommend checking them out very, very soon because they are going to be closing tomorrow. Then across our business functions, we've got roles in procurement, communications, business and marketing, HR. Then within our HIV business, Vive Healthcare, we've got a variety of roles opening a little bit later in the year as well. So again, no matter what you're studying, there will be something open and eligible for you to come and join us. So we opened a few of our roles a few weeks ago. They're again open, some of which until tomorrow, some of which until next week. So I would act quickly if you are interested. We're also going to be opening up a variety of new positions and new industrial placement roles on the 3rd of November. So this is everything within our consumer healthcare research and development. So if you're interested in new products and researching and developing on those consumer things, so the things like Panadol, things like the oral care, the toothpastes, that sort of thing, we've got a variety of different R&D roles opening there, as well as human resources and within our HIV business and within regulatory affairs, and a variety of different roles opening in November. Then you'd go through our process, which I'll explain what that is in a couple of moments, and then come to an assessment centre with us. So that'll either be kind of November, December if you're applying now, or February next year if you're applying to one of those later opening roles. And then hopefully coming to join us next summer to kick off your kind of 12-month placement with us. So that's a kind of overview of what the timings, the timescales are like. But I'm now going to talk through, and I think the main bulk of what we're here for is a little bit about our application process. How can you succeed? How can you succeed in a process that has been slightly adapted to be virtual this year? What can you do? How can you put yourself in the best position to be successful? So this is the end-to-end GSK industrial placement application process, every step that you'll need to go through if you are going to be successful and come and join us on one of our programs. As I mentioned before, it's a strengths-based approach. We're not hugely asking for your experience or your grades. I mean, if you've got some, that's great, but you don't have to. We're more interested and we're more looking at your potential, your energy, your engagement, your motivations, your strengths. Those are the things that are really important to us. And that's what this process is really designed to try and find out and discover from you. So it starts with a very, very short eligibility form. It only takes you like 2 minutes, put in a bit of basic information about yourself. You'd then be invited to complete the World of GSK. So this is an online test. You watch a few videos, you're given a few different scenarios, all about what you do in each situation based around the GSK values and expectations. And I'll talk what those through are in just a few moments. But that is not a time test. It typically takes students maybe an hour or so, but it gives you a real good sense of what it's like to work at GSK, a good sense of all the different functions that we have that make up the organization. And it lets you know, is this the sort of company that you'd actually like to work for? Does this actually sound like the sort of role and organization and business for you? So it kind of can go both ways in terms of it'll let us see if you've got the right values for the company and let you see if you're actually genuinely interested. Provided you've met that benchmark for that World of GSK online test, you'd be invited to complete our written application, which is a few written questions, largely based around your motivations, particularly your motivations for that role you're applying for, your motivations for GSK specifically, and there is space that you can put in a bit of information about any societies that you're in, any extracurricular activities, if you've done a part-time job and that's given you some transferable skills or anything like that, you can bring that in. Again, it's not asking directly for internships, previous experience, that sort of thing. We're more interested in your motivations. That's the real important part of that process. If you're applying for something within engineering, within research and development, there may be an additional question asking a little bit about your technical knowledge and your what any sort of relevant question for that role in particular as well. That does differ a little bit depending on which business area you're coming and joining us. And finally, you'd be invited to one of our assessment centres, and then following that, accepting an offer with us. So this is our process. This is what our typical process has been like for the last couple of years, I suppose. There has been a few kind of tweaks and changes for this year, as a lot of companies have had to do. And parts of the process that may have been in person, that may have been kind of physically on site, meeting your team, meeting your managers, meeting loads of other people, they have been slightly adapted with the current situation and have been adapted virtually. The only change to our process for this year really is that our assessment centres for this year are all going to be online. So they're going to be through a tool similar to Microsoft Teams or something equivalent to that. And I'm going to go through a few top tips for you, how you can do really well in one of these assessment centres. So to give you a quick overview of what you might expect at one of these assessment centres, you'd have a strengths-based interview. So this is an interview all about getting to know your values, getting to know your motivations, getting to know your engagement. You're asked a number of maybe hypothetical questions, maybe different scenarios, what you do in each instance. It's not asking you for your previous experience. It's not asking what you've done in the past. It's more looking ahead. What is your potential? What can you bring to us in the future? That's what we really want to get out of that strengths-based interview. There may be some one-on-one exercises with an assessor, including a presentation that you'll be able to pre-prepare on the day, so you don't have to worry too much about that. And there may be an additional technical exercise if you are going for one of our more technical research and development or engineering or equivalent related roles. There may be a technical exercise. Typically, these assessment centres, these online assessment centres, take around about half a day, and you will be on camera with an assessor as well. So it's not a pre-recorded sort of thing. It is a two-way conversation. You can ask questions, you can engage, you can learn more about the company, about the assessor. But that's a kind of quick overview of what we're planning and what we're expecting for our assessment centres this time round. As I said, a lot of companies are changing and adapting and bringing in new kind of ways of doing their assessment centres. And we were, I guess, not lucky enough, but we were able to actually bring a few of these in the spring. We had some of our graduate roles, all our apprentice roles, and a few of our placement roles that we hadn't done the assessment centre yet by kind of last March, April, when the lockdown came in, and we had to kind of work quite quickly, think on our feet a bit. How can we adapt this in a relatively short amount of time to really suit the virtual world and suit a virtual assessment centre? So from that, we had a load of different assessment centres across March, April, and I learned quite a lot by organising these, by running these on the day. I've got a selection of top tips for you if you are going to be coming to and applying to one of these roles. If you're applying to any of the large companies who may be doing online assessment centres, a few top tips that I've actually learned through that process so far, and hopefully will hold you in good stead if you are coming to apply to any of the roles or doing an online assessment centre this autumn. So they are brand new for a lot of organisations. Most students haven't experienced these before. Most assessors haven't experienced these before. But I've got a few tips that I'll go through each of them now. So firstly, it sounds kind of obvious, but treat it as much as you can. I know it's quite different to what you may have gone through in the past or what you may have been expecting, but treat the online interviews, treat the online assessment centres like a regular in-person interview. Typically, let's talk about timings, I suppose. Typically, if you're coming to an assessment centre in person and you have to travel to site, you're going to factor in things like traffic, like train delays, like tube delays. You're going to try and aim to get there maybe 10, 15 minutes early, make sure you're in the right place. And that still holds true, I think, for those virtual assessment centres. Do make sure you log on a few minutes before. 10, 15 minutes before is absolutely fine. We had so many students last time round who log on 30 seconds before, realize their tech's not working or their Wi-Fi's gone down at the exact moment it's supposed to be starting. Give yourself a little 10, 15-minute buffer. It really can help. It stops any delays and a little bit of stress in the morning. So I would say as well, do whatever you do to make yourself feel a little bit more energized. Me personally, I've been working at home quite a lot over the last 6 months. A bit of fresh air does me the world of good before work. Go for a little walk. Pretend that you are doing a commute or a traveling into the assessment centre and walk around the block a couple of times. Clear your mind, get a bit of fresh air, and treat it as if it's a regular in-person interview. When I first started working at home back in March quite regularly, I would set my alarm at 8:45, roll out of bed, open the laptop, still in my pajamas. And I realised after a couple of weeks, this is not the best way to be productive. This is not the best way to actually enjoy my work either. So getting up as if I was going to work, getting dressed properly, going for a little walk around the block, having a coffee out somewhere and clearing your mind a little bit did me the world of good when preparing for work. And I think it's really useful when you're preparing for an assessment centre as well. Also, you don't have to necessarily wear a full suit or really, really smart, but I think whatever is kind of comfortable for you, but also looks fairly professional. You don't have to be sitting there in a full kind of three-piece suit or a really, really smart outfit or anything like that. But do try and appear where you can as professional as you can. We understand it's a little different doing it online, so don't worry too much about that. For example, I'm wearing a shirt now. On the top half, I'm wearing tracksuit bottoms on the bottom. No one was ever going to know. So that's absolutely fine. Whatever gets you into the right mindset as well. Sometimes if you're sitting around wearing your comfortable clothes, you don't necessarily get into the same mindset you do if you are dressed a little smarter. So do what you need to do to actually get into the right mindset and treat it like it is an in-person interview. I'd say as well, use the breaks available to you throughout our assessment centres, there's various different points where you might get a 20-minute break, you might get a 30-minute break, you might have a little lunch break, or whatever it might be. And so many students are worried about missing the kind of return when it comes back, that they don't actually leave their computer, and they end up sitting and not going to stretch their legs, not closing their screen. It's not healthy. It doesn't help you get into the right mindset for those interviews. So do make sure you close your laptop for a bit. If you've got a break, go for a little walk for 10 minutes, stretch your legs, go into a different room, try to do something that isn't staring at a screen for a few minutes. That really can help you as well. So those are a few tips of treating it like it's a regular in-person interview. But flexibility is really important. We're very flexible with the students coming on these virtual interviews and assessment centres, and we hope that you'd be flexible with us as well. So we've had, students whose Wi-Fi is not working. That's fine. We can work around it. We can do different sorts of things. So don't worry too much. We've had students where their brothers and sisters or their parents have kind of burst in, shouting in the background. And again, we'll be flexible. Don't worry too much about that. I know not everyone has a quiet place where they can go and they can concentrate. And we will try and be as flexible as you can. But I would say with that, we were hoping that the students are as flexible with us as we are with you. So we had, for example, we had all of our assessors at one of our sites in Barnard Castle back in March, and then the site Wi-Fi all went down. All the assessors disappeared at the exact same moment halfway through all of the students' assessment centres and presentations. So we'd hope for a little bit of flexibility on both sides if something like that does happen as well. I'd say it sounds pretty obvious, but try not to be nervous. Try and be yourself. In my experience, the assessors are far more nervous than the candidates with these sorts of things. Remember, the vast majority of assessors have never done an online assessment centre, never done an online interview either. I remember preparing for our assessment centres a few months ago, and our candidates, you go in and chat to the candidates before, and they're kind of nervous, feeling a little bit nervous. You go to the assessors, and they're all absolutely terrified. So do remember, keep that in mind. Your assessor, the person interviewing you, is probably just as nervous, possibly even more nervous than you are, and they haven't done this online either. So really, don't worry. It is kind of a new thing for everyone. We're not expecting you to be an expert at any of this. You can also reach out at any point during, before, about adjustments. If you don't have the right equipment, if you don't have a laptop that works so well, if you do need any help with any stage of the process, I strongly encourage you to reach out. We can ship different things to you. We can work around depending on what you need as well. And then finally, make the most out of it. Try and ask as many questions. It's not going to be kind of a robotic interview. We do want you to get to know a bit about the company, chat to current placement students or grads, whoever else is at the assessment centre, chat to your fellow interviewees as well. It makes it a nice, friendly atmosphere. You don't just want to come into your interview, ask your questions robotically and leave. You want to get to know the company too. This is somewhere you might spend a year, maybe longer, working. So it's really important that you ask everything and you get a real good sense of the company as well. Treat it like a conversation, not like a kind of pre-recorded robotic interview. So those are a few top tips. I can give you a couple more preparation tips from our current placement students, and then in a few minutes time we are going to open up for a few questions from you all. So this is from some of our placement students who were successful last time round, and a few top tips. So what they said, I chatted to them a little bit about what they did and what they'd recommend for students coming through this process this time round. So if you do have cue cards, if you want to have some things to jog your memory, don't have them on your phone. That's apparently something that's very, very bad. If it looks like you're just looking at your phone while you're on a video interview, it doesn't look so great. You can dot them all around your screen, and we'll never know, but it can help jog your memory. But as long as it doesn't look like you're looking at your phone the entire time. They've recommended being 15-20 minutes early online. I think that's similar to what I mentioned before. Then brush up on your technical knowledge, practice presenting over video call. That can seem a little different. You can pre-record yourself, watch it back, see what you like over video, see how you're coming across. Are you looking engaged? Are you seeming interested? That sort of thing. And then finally, learn about those GSK values. Learn about how you align with these values. So that's really, really important. That really does underpin our process and what we're looking for. We've got a really strong set of values and expectations. It's at the heart of everything we do. It helps us do great things for patients, consumers, make it a great place to work. So our values are all around patient focus, transparency, respect for others, integrity. Then our expectations of courage, accountability, development, teamwork are so important to GSK, so important to what we do as an organization. that I'd strongly recommend you read up on these as much as you can in advance. We've got an extensive amount on our website, all about our values, and they do underpin what we're looking for in those online tests, what you'll be asked at an assessment centre, at an interview. So do make sure you read up on them. Are these things that really resonate with you? Are these values that you hold as well? If so, it could be a really good fit for you. But our assessment centres, whether in person or online, are still going to be based around these values. These are still the things that we really are looking for, no matter what format you're doing your assessment centre in. So read up on that. And the same is true if you're applying to other companies. They'll all have their own set of values and expectations. And each of them will be slightly different, and it really will help you to know, is this a sort of company where you'd like to work, just as much as is it a right fit for you. So finally, from me, before we open up for questions, a few other top tips. We've got a couple of tools on our website. Also, there's a website here, jobme.com. You can put in a bit of information about yourself, and it'll tell you what your strengths are, how those align to the workplace, and a few, I guess, insights into different roles and that sort of thing that you can do. So we've got that, JobMe. We've also got a tool on our website, on our Future Leaders page, that really could align you with a different function and different Future Leaders program within GSK. There's plenty of practice online tests on capassessments.com. So they help run our processes, they help run our online tests and our materials for assessment centres. So do check out those practice questions and think about your motivation as much as you can. You will be asked why you want to apply here, why you want to apply to this role, why do you want to apply to GSK. So thinking specifically about anything that appeals about the company in terms of culture, development, projects, products, any social responsibility things we do, anything that really jumps out about GSK in particular, that's what we want to know. And the same is true about the role. Do you know what that role entails? Do you know what you're going to gain from it? Do you know what's going to make you suitable? Try and read up as much as you can. There's a lot on our website about these things. There's a lot in the media, as I mentioned, over the last few months about GSK, and throughout social media, throughout LinkedIn. We've got over 300 placement students always posting about different things they're doing, different projects they're getting involved with. So use that as well, and it'll help bring the company to life a little bit more. Then remember what we're looking for. We're looking for you to be specific. We're looking for you to be engaged, and that's not compared to anyone else. You don't have to be naturally outgoing to seem engaged and enthusiastic. We want to see what that looks like for you, and we are really looking at your values, your motivations, and your strengths. So hopefully that has been quite useful and brought a little bit about what we're looking for and a few top tips for our virtual assessment centres for you as well. So I'm going to leave you on this screen. We've got more information about our industrial placement roles just there, and if you are interested, if any of that does sound like a good fit for you, if the company's purpose, mission sounds like something you'd like to get involved with, if any of the roles that I've talked about sound like they are a good match for you in your own interest areas, I'd recommend you checking out srg-gsk.co.uk. All of our roles that are open now are on there. We've got many of which are closing literally tomorrow. So if you are interested, do so sooner rather than later. And we will have a couple more roles opening in around about 2 weeks' time as well. So there'll be plenty of options no matter what you're interested in. But yeah, I'd like to say thanks so much for listening, for joining, for giving up a bit of your time to listen about GSK and our process and our assessment centres today. Do make the most of this event. There's loads of great booths, loads of really, really great companies here as well, and they'll be really happy to answer any questions that you've got throughout the day. So do a bit of exploring, go and check out as many of the booths as you can, particularly the GSK booth. Of course, we've got a few materials, a few videos, and some of our current placement students will be there throughout the day. So do make sure to go and check that out as well. But yeah, thanks so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the session. Happy to answer any questions that you might have as well.
Hi, Josh. Hi there.
Hey.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Nisha from Rate My Placement, and thank you so much for giving that really insightful presentation. So I've been looking at all the questions that have been coming in, and we've had quite a few. And I just want to say, what an exciting time to join a big pharmaceutical healthcare company.
I know. It's crazy. You like turn on BBC News and then it's a story about GSK or what we're doing, and it's like you sometimes just see my office and like the Guardian or something. You're like, this is weird, but it's quite exciting. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I bet you can see all those applications coming in. So to start us off with some of the questions, you mentioned you've got a really strong mission statement. What are your core values, and what do you think makes you stand out from other big firms?
So I mentioned a little bit about the core values of GSK just towards the end of that. So I think probably out of those kind of four main values that we've got, probably the one that's most important to what we do as a company, and partly the reason why the company exists, I suppose, is that patient focus value. That's a lot. I mean, it really does underpin our process and what we're looking for, but also everyone that comes into the company, no matter what level they're actually at. We do want to see people whose work, they do have that patient, that consumer, the people who need the products, that need the medicines, need the vaccines, whatever it might be, those people in mind with everything that we're kind of doing, whether that's directly or indirectly. I think that real impact on people, I think, is something that's really, really good about GSK, something that I really like. And those values around patient focus, around integrity, transparency, but also that respect for other people as well. You'll feel that if you do come to GSK at any time in future or come to one of our assessment centres. People do genuinely have real strong respect for colleagues. It's a very open and welcoming environment. A couple of our placement students who've been at the booth have been chatting about that the other day, talking about they've come in as a placement student, were expected to be treated as a placement student, but instead have been kind of welcomed in as a colleague who has got genuine strong ideas and can add a lot of value to the team. And they haven't just been treated like as a student who's only here on an internship. They're genuinely like a proper member of the team. So I think that patient focus, that respect for people are probably two things that really jump out that I really like about the company anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a great answer. And you mentioned that you have around 320 placement students that come to GSK every year. You mentioned you have your head office in West London. Are there other locations you mentioned?
There are, yeah. So there's about over 300 placement students we've got right now, I think. So our global head office is Brentford, West London. That's where most of our business operations roles are. So those are roles within like finance, like marketing, like communications, like procurement, like HR, and a variety of other functions are there. It's largely those business related roles. Our R&D hub, so for our pharmaceutical products where we do the research and development, is in Stevenage, which is in Hertfordshire, so not about 40 minutes north of London, something like that. So that's where we've got the majority of our pharmaceutical research and development roles, so over 100 odd in there. We've also, as I mentioned, we're going to have our consumer healthcare research and development roles opening in a couple of weeks, and they're located in Surrey, in Weybridge, and we also have our manufacturing and supply chain sites across the country. So those are in Barnard Castle, which I think I mentioned, which has become quite famous, I think, in the last few months, Barnard Castle. We've also got a couple of sites in Scotland, on the south coast, at Worthing, also another site in Ware in Hertfordshire as well. So it is quite geographically spread, and we do have placement roles across all of those sites.
Brilliant. And what advice would you give to students who don't know what kind of service line they want to go into, what area of GSK?
Yeah, I'd say read up as much as you can. I mean, there is a bit about on the job descriptions. We do on some of the job descriptions, there's kind of videos that can help bring it to life a little bit more. We're not expecting you to be an expert in any of those areas. What you can also do, you are allowed to make more than one application to a GSK placement. I would strongly encourage you to not make hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, but make one or two that you genuinely might be interested in. That's absolutely fine. We do have a couple of our current placement students at various points during the day at our booth as well, and you're very welcome to go and ask them about what they do and about their roles. So we've had a couple within procurement and real estate, and those are kind of examples of, I guess, business areas within GSK that people don't necessarily know much about and don't know what that actually entails, and then they chat about it and you're like, actually that is quite interesting, and that could be something that's a real good fit for me. So I'd strongly encourage you to check out the booth, read up as much as you can, looking on those job descriptions, any videos that we've got on many of those job descriptions as well. And you can make more than one application. Don't make loads, but you can hedge your bets a little bit, as long as it's something that you're genuinely interested in.
Yeah, and I mean, it's probably a very difficult decision for students, especially.
Absolutely.
There's so many options out there. And thanks for talking about the application process. And I had a question about the application form. And basically, what are you looking for in an application? What makes an application stand out? And is there anything you would advise against putting in those?
Yeah, so that application form, I think the the most important part of that, and like the thing that you'll see on all of our placement roles and the questions that do come up on all of them, no matter what business area, it's that motivation for GSK, and it's that motivation for whatever the specific role that you've actually applied for is. And we really do want to see you be real specific about that. We get loads of applications in that say things like, I really want to work for a really big global company to get lots of good experience, and you're like, that's okay, but that could apply to any of the hundreds of companies that are at this event. That's not just necessarily about GSK. We want to see specific reasons about the company. Is it something about that mission that I talked about? Anything about the culture? Any projects that it's getting involved with? Is it the work it's doing at the moment and the loads of different partnerships GSK has? Show that you've done a bit of research. Show that you're genuinely interested in GSK. I know you're applying to probably lots of other companies, but do make it think to whoever's reading it that this is the company for you, this is the role for you, and be as specific as you can, and show that you've done a little bit of research as well. So anything that's really, really general and could apply to any other company is probably not what we're looking for.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's a great answer. I mean, is there anything that you've seen that you would definitely advise against on applications?
I think anything that doesn't mention the word GSK or doesn't mention the actual role that you've applied for, it gives you kind of a red flag that maybe this is a copy and paste job. So sometimes some of the managers, they like specifically look to see where they've mentioned that role at some point, and we also do look to see, has this person, is it actually talking about GSK, or is this copy and pasted from their application to this other company or anything? So I'd certainly advise against doing that.
Yes, definitely. Another question came in about if you were successful to go on to the next stage, what's the timeline? So when do you usually find out?
Yeah, so you fill out that eligibility form. That only takes a few minutes. Then you'd get pretty quickly after that, provided you are in the right degree and right year of study or whatever it might be, get invited to do the online test. You'd usually find out if you've met the benchmark and passed that online test within only a couple of days, sometimes 24, sometimes to 72 hours after taking it. Then you typically find out if you're invited to an assessment centre, and find out if you've been successful after that application form stage around 2 weeks after the role is actually closed. So many of those are closing this week. Some of them are closing next week. So if you have applied for any of those ones that are closing this week, you'll probably find out in about 2 weeks from now.
Brilliant. Another question came in. I think a lot of students are in the process of maybe applying. Now, is there any, I think you mentioned some in your presentation, but is there any other resources that the students can use to really help them with the application?
Yeah, I think I touched upon it, but I was running a little bit out of time, so I went through it a bit quick. But there's that last slide. It had the CAP assessments online test practice page. It is quite useful. So as I say, the online test is a part of our process. They also have some questions on there in terms of questions you might get in an assessment centre. And I would definitely recommend using that, because it does. It does make it a lot less intimidating, a lot less scary when you've practiced these online tests loads of times before, that when you're doing it for real, then if you're just going in cold and you don't know what to expect. So I'd recommend doing that. I would recommend the tool that we've got on our website as well. If you don't know a little bit about GSK, or you don't know what sort of function or area you want to go into, on our Future Leaders program website, there's a tool. You put a bit of information about yourself, and it only takes about 5 minutes, and you answer a few questions, and it'll tell you which one of our programs is a good fit for you. So do check that out as well.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, and you'll have all the resources on your booth that the students can.
I'm sure it's there somewhere. Yeah.
Brilliant. And I've just got one more question. It's quite a nice question, but what is your favourite thing about working at GSK?
My favorite thing about working at GSK, I genuinely, I know it sounds a bit cheesy, right? But I think the people at GSK are really, really nice, and it's quite different to what I mean. I don't want to say it's quite different to what I thought, and I thought they'd all be horrible. But no, they are much more friendly and much less corporate, and much less. I guess it's a much less intimidating atmosphere. It's a very, very friendly atmosphere. I think the fact that everyone's coming in, sharing that values, and really wanting to work towards that purpose and mission of the company makes it a really, really nice place to work. It's not that kind of working 15 hours a day, big corporate company that I thought it might be. There's a huge emphasis on the work-life balance, and the people are very, very nice, and it's very, very flexible. So that kind of atmosphere, I think, is probably my favorite thing about working for the company.
Yeah, well, it certainly seems like a great place to work. And that brings us to a close now. So thank you so much for the presentation and answering those questions. I know a few students have been asking about open and close dates of applications. So they can head over to your booth, and you said yourself and a few placement students will be there to answer those questions.
Throughout the day. So yeah, opening dates, they're mostly open now, many of which closing. On that website that I showed at the end, it does have the closing date on each of the different job adverts. They're all slightly different, so you can check that out as well. So that's srg-gsk.co.uk. I think that's right, yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for that, and we will speak very soon. Thank you.
Cheers, everyone. Have a good one. Enjoy the rest of the event. Yeah, thank you.